Hi, are you interested in collecting data for SDGs? Water service levels, sanitation service levels, hygiene service levels, and so on. Or are you interested in tracking KPIs relevant to your organization and your work? In that case, indicators in mWater and Solstice can help you out. In this video, we'll look at what indicators in mWater and Solstice are, how they work, and how you can use them both in terms of collecting data as well as analyzing and visualizing indicator data. So, let's begin. What do we mean by indicators? Well, here's a whole wide variety of things that are indicators in mWater and Solstice. Water point functionality, water quality indicators such as E. coli, arsenic, chloride, fluorine, and so on. Water service levels, sanitation service levels, menstrual hygiene management levels, water utility performance grades, water user fee collection, or COVID readiness in health facilities around the world. And then KPIs, that is, key performance indicators for individual organizations, and much more. So an indicator can mean a whole lot. Let's take a closer look. In short, indicators are the best way to collect standardized data in mWater and Solstice. Most importantly, indicators allow you to collect standardized data across surveys and across different contexts, like different countries or otherwise relevant contexts. Additionally, where relevant, indicators allow you to automatically calculate results and turn data into insight. So you can imagine a survey with 10 questions all talking about water service level, and the indicator as defined can calculate you the service level automatically following a set of rules so that you can grab onto the service level information in real time. And we've made it easy for you to bring indicators into any of your surveys, and you can bring more than one indicator into a survey. And then you can access these indicators as data sources in your analytics in mWater and Solstice. That means when you're building maps, dashboards, data grids, or consoles, you can easily bring together indicator information. For example, to see how water point functionality evolved over time, water service level, hygiene service level. That's everything in a nutshell. Let's go deeper. How do you find indicators? You can go to our global indicator library on portal.mwater.co/hash/indicators or solstice.world/hash/indicators and view our publicly visible global indicator library, where there's a big set of indicators created by, first and foremost, WASH experts. Many and most are grouped by SDG. On this page you can find the definitions of these indicators, the related documentation, and the properties that those indicators contain. Properties meaning the data fields that belong to those indicators. And from there, you can bring these indicators into your surveys. When you do that, all the questions relevant to filling that indicator will be automatically added to your survey. So let's take a look. I'm here in the portal and I see my global indicator library. I can search using the search bar, or I can click a segment, for example, clean water and sanitation, and I get a set of indicators around SDG 6. Now let's say I'm interested in a recommended indicator, for example, the water service level, water service ladder. I can click into it, and now I'm on an individual indicator page. Here I can see key information about the indicator, as well as the questions that will be brought into my survey that are part of this indicator, all relevant relevant to the water service ladder. So if you bring this indicator into your survey, you know that you're collecting the same information that many others are also collecting. We'll return to this in a bit. Let's look even more closely at what belongs in an indicator. An indicator contains, ideally, definitions, so written section on what the indicator is for, what's its intent, what is it intending to track. Then references, so wherever relevant, there'll be links to outside documentation that justifies or explains the indicator even more. An absolutely critical thing for indicators to contain are its properties, which are the data fields that are collected within an indicator or calculated on the basis of some other properties. So examples of properties would be the date that an indicator is collected, a water point site, so the digital representation of the infrastructure of water points, the water source type, for example, the E. coli count. Those are examples of data fields that would be input by enumerators or users. And you can imagine there being a property for water service level, which is calculated on the basis of other properties in the indicator based on logic that has been set up. And that's what we mean by calculations. A calculations section within an indicator is intended to display to you the exact logic with which some properties may be calculated from others. So how does a service level actually get determined given all the information in the indicator? Finally, as we briefly saw, question sets. So which are the questions that you have to fill in to input data into these indicator properties? Now note that there can be more than one question set to choose from if you have different contexts. So you might have a country A question set and then a country B question set because they're slightly contextualized differently, but they ultimately lead in this example to the same service level options. Okay, and the key thing is that the indicator is not there for you to collect data into until you bring it into a survey. So you have to bring indicators into surveys before you can fill in data in. So let's take a look at an example indicator. In this case, SDG 6.2b, our hygiene service ladder indicator. The data fields that it collects are the household location, so this is a household level indicator, the date the data was collected, where household members most often wash hands, the availability of water, and the availability of soap or detergent. And using these ingredients, this indicator goes an extra step and calculates the service level from those three last questions: the household place where they wash hands, the availability of water, availability of soap or detergent, and then places it in a location at a given time. So let's open that up. Here in the indicator library, and I'm opening the hygiene service ladder. So let's dive a bit deeper into this one. We see the definitions at the top. So there are three service levels as defined by JMP. Basic, where availability of hand washing facility is on the premises and soap and water are available. Limited, where there is a hand washing facility but without both soap and water present. Or no facility, so no hand washing facility on the premises. We have a bit of guidance on how to use it. So in this case, the questions are designed to add into household surveys. And it notes that it's possible to use mWater's and Solstice's confidential data mode to obscure the location of households for data protection. We are then given a description of what the indicator calculates. So what are the options that lead to the service level? So a service level is calculated to be basic if the hand washing facility is present, it has water, and has soap. If the hand washing facility is present, but the responses to either the presence of water or the presence of soap is no, so there's no water or there's no soap, then the service level is calculated as limited. If there's no hand washing facility at all, the service level is no facility. So that's simple enough. Then we have evidence justification, a link for references, and then a list of the properties or data fields that we see in the indicator. So we have the service level, as we know, basic, limited, no facility, and then these three questions: hand washing facility present, water, soap, household location, GPS, and then the date is included. When we scroll to the bottom, we see these as questions. So we have a location question, as well as the options available for the hand washing facility, water availability, soap, and do they currently have access in this case. So that's the anatomy of an individual indicator page. Now, how do we make use of this if we are starting to get an understanding what an indicator is? And this is a simple example. There are more complicated indicators, of course, available as well. Let's take a look at the logic as well. So we understand that there's a calculation. So from the hand washing facility, presence of water and presence of soap, the system will automatically, for each response that you collect, determine also the hand washing ladder. So if we peek behind the scenes, we see on the right that there is this logic that has been set up, which basically replicates what we had described, but in a way that the computer understands, the system understands, and it makes the determination. So you input data, it follows rules, and results in an automatically calculated service level. So, how do we add indicators to your surveys? Now, there are two ways to do this. You can go to the indicator library, open the indicator, and click the button that's on the page to start a whole new survey based on that indicator. Or you can go to an existing survey, find the indicator from the indicator library pane that you can make visible on the survey page, and then you can add it to the survey. Use pathway number 1 when you want to build your survey around a given indicator. Use pathway number 2 when you've already got an existing survey and you want to add one or more indicators to that survey. So let's do that. I'm back at the hygiene service ladder, and I will select this button, Start New Survey for this indicator. And the system will create a survey for me and bring in all those questions that are relevant. Now, if I deploy this survey, I can immediately start collecting data for this SDG. The other way is for me to start a new survey or go to one that I already have. I'll give it a name, hand washing hygiene service ladder household survey in this case. And now I can add my indicator from the library by selecting this tiny link on the right side, indicator library, and I remember the name, hygiene service ladder. So now I can add that to the survey, and it will ask me whether the indicator should be open or closed. What does this mean? Open indicator viewers mean that you collect the data in your survey, the survey is private to you or your organization, but the indicator values, so the service level and so on, are visible to the world. And if it's closed, it means that the values are only visible to you and people who are viewers of the deployment. This allows you to collect elaborate survey data, possibly with some sensitive information, but then share the key result, let's say the SDG service level, to the world. So that's why we recommend using open indicators in this case. Now it's built a form, and now if I wanted to have a water service level, I can add that from the indicator library as well. So that's how easy it is to include and import indicators into your surveys. Notice that there's a white tick on a blue background whenever a question is linked to an indicator, and you cannot remove it from your survey without removing the indicator, because that would break the functioning of the indicator for this survey. And another tip is that you can also click Open Calculations here and look at the logic for this indicator, possibly even change it. Depends a little bit on the indicator. So now I've created a survey and I've added the hygiene service ladder indicator to it. Simple, all good so far. So now I could go out and collect some data for my households. And the great next step is that we're able to visualize that indicator data also directly in mWater or Solstice. And you can of course export this data as you can any other data in the platform. Indicators are a separate data source which you can select when you're building dashboards or maps or consoles or data grids. And that makes it easy to display all things about the indicator. For example, achievement over time, or aggregations by district, region, or country. So imagine the percentage of functional water points for a given region. Or you can visualize it by school, by healthcare facility, by community. And this is a powerful way to display your impact and results to a wider audience, whilst distilling the message to the key thing you want to display, let's say the SDG, or your organizational KPI. You can keep all the complicated survey data private to your organization. Now, just a practical tip, when you're building visualizations, often you want to visualize it by picking the relevant site as the data source, and then navigating to the related indicator. And I'll show this in practice. Why? Well, often if you want to map data or view results, you want to see the latest result for any given site. Then the system understands it best when you start with the site as the data source. And you can ask the database questions like, okay, for this school, how has it performed over time? Somebody's created 5 indicator responses for that school over 2 years. You can see how it's developing. So it makes sense to pick the site as the data source and then navigate to the related indicator. And if there's no site, and in some other cases, you want to pick the raw indicator as the data source. We'll see this in practice. So let's build some visualizations. Let's say that I'm in the dashboard screen and I'm creating a new dashboard. How do I bring my indicator data? I've gone out and I've collected a bit. So I'll create a little map. I'm clicking Edit, and let's stick to the example of the hygiene service ladder. Now that was a household location indicator, so it's not a household site question. So immediately I jump into a slightly more advanced option here called markers and shapefiles. So a marker is just a dot on a map. So let's say hygiene service ladder. There we go. And then let's select a data source. Now instead of sites or surveys, it's handiest if I pick indicator. So I'll pick the hygiene service ladder. Now it gives me a tip saying generally it's best to get indicator values from the related site, but this indicator only has the household location, not a site. So I'll use the raw indicator. Now I don't see anything on my map yet. I need to add a location. So the map needs to know, okay, well you want points on a map. How do I know how to locate those points? I click select ... select household location. And now I'll start seeing a bunch. I think I'll see a fair bunch around the world, but my example ones happen to be in Finland only. So I will just filter down the administrative region for this example to my neighbors here. Now I can go to options and automatically zoom for some better visibility. Okay, so here are all my household visits. I spoke to my neighbors. Great, but we can go further. This is kind of informative, but what if we could color the dots on the map by the service level? Well, we can. So this is the data source of the indicator. You can see that there's the service level, hand washing facility presence, water presence, and soap, as well as the date and the household location. So all the things we covered on the slide. Now if I want to color by data, so in this case by the service level, I can select that as the option. Now we get colors. The dots, the points on the map, are colored by the indicator. I can manually map rather the hygiene value, so it's purple for basic, yellow for limited, I believe a darker yellow, let's say, for no facility. So fantastic, and we could make the symbols homes, the markers extra large for visibility. Great. Please check out our resource center and our video channel for more guides on how to build visualizations in general. I'm going to save my map. Hygiene service ladder demo. And here we go. Now we have a little map, and we have our data collected and mapped, and we see at a glance where the problems might be. If I click, and if I have the permissions to see, I can now see the individual response. So this was how the survey was filled in. Great, that's one step. Let's add a list as well. So we can add a table and do kind of the same thing. Hygiene service ladder. Just bring the water presence of water, presence of soap. And we see that that's a lot of responses. That's the global set. So let me quickly add a filter to sort of say only service ladder in Finland, and make sure this filter applies to all of my widgets. Great. Now I will edit this table again, add a new column, and say soap I already had, hand washing facility present. So we have yes, there's water, yes, there's soap, yes, there's hand washing facility. What date was that collected? And crucially, what was the service level? Maybe date makes most sense to have at the start. Perfect, so we have a neat little table. We could order it by date. Beautiful. Now we see the table. These data points on the map are now listed on a table as well. Finally, just to take this further, we can create a pie chart and see how these values split. Are we achieving a good service level for hygiene? Basic was purple, limited was yellow, no facility was orange. It's nicely split, though it would be best if it was all a decent service level. And that's how we can start using some of this indicator data in our visualizations. I'll give another example by showing you a map of WaterPoint functionality. This time I'll choose water points created by anybody. It's my map layer. And now I will color by the related indicator. So now we see a more complicated view, and I scroll down to this area, related indicators. So these are all the indicators that have a WaterPoint site question, and this links the two pieces of data together in the database. Now I can choose this WaterPoint functional status recommended indicator, because I'm curious about the WaterPoint functionality in Malawi. I select the functional status as the field with which to color my data, and I color it so, and I'm only interested in Malawi, so I add a general filter for Malawi and zoom right in and see what we find. We find that there's this much publicly visible indicator information in the system already for over 100,000 water points in Malawi alone. So it's a really powerful way to collect relevant data, and this is always automatically calculated depending on the indicator. So if a person has answered questions regarding functionality, we get this simple determination. Is it functional? Is it partially functional, not functional, no longer existing, and so on. And these are all clickable points, of course, in our map, if I have the access rights to the data underneath. Perfect. So let's jump back to wind this all up. So we've seen some examples of how you can visualize indicator data. The key point is, if the data is there in the indicator and you have access to it, there's a way to visualize it and analyze it. So that's the lowdown on indicators in mWater and Solstice. They're very useful for collecting standardized data. I've shown you examples of SDGs, but remember they can become as complicated and as involved as you need and as relevant to your own work. So you can have organizational key performance indicators, beneficiary numbers, traffic light indicators, and many, many, many more. So please go take a look, explore them, read the definitions, perhaps collect your own, see how you can visualize them, and if you're interested in having more indicators created for SDGs or for your own organizational use, please feel free to talk to us at info@mwater.co or info@solstice.world. Thank you very much.